And we're back.
Some breaking news. It's coming off the back of the last topic here. Tom F1, one of our dedicated fans, he just sent us a message about Manor, since we were just speculating about their driver lineup. Pascal Wehrlein. Sometime in the past hour, it's been announced that he's actually been signed as a driver.
Oh,
Manor.
wow.
So there we go. There's one of them. One of the two. But who else it could be, we don't know. We have no idea. It's a mystery. But anyways, let's talk about some engine updates again. There's been quite a bit of news about that this past week. Mercedes, first of all, the dominant. Most news about
powerful them. Mercedes.
Powerful Mercedes. Yeah, basically they've kind of been in the news the most because they've been bragging the most, I guess, this week.
Well, how could you not?
Their right to brag the most, for sure. Yeah. It's actually mind-blowing. So they said that at the end of the year last year, they were peaking around 900 horsepower.
Oh, my God.
And they expect to do a fair bit more than that this year, coming into this year. Some crazy numbers here. They're coming back with a larger turbo. I'll explain why in a minute. They say they've reached over 45% total thermal efficiency on these engines, which is insane. As I said in the last segment, the past 2 years, but they don't really even need these gains. They've won 32 out of the last 38 races, which is insane. When they announced their new engine last week, they had a special media presentation, and it's unavailable online, but apparently a chart was shown there that's showing the gains they've made in efficiency and power, and they're expecting to put onto the track this year almost the same amount of gain as they came back with last year in 2015 over the 2014
Holy
engine,
shit.
which is ridiculous. But somehow they're still scared of Ferrari. Well, maybe because Ferrari stole some of their engineers. So just some numbers here that came from motorsport.com. In the last year of the V8 engine, thermal efficiency the Kerr's power reaching the crank was about 39%, right? Last year was about 85 in 2014. 2015 reached 95% of the power.
Holy shit.
And who knows what they got this year. They're not going to release that. So that's the power from
15%. That's it.
The energy, they might go over 100. The energy from the crank, from the MGUK that reaches the crankshaft to the tires, 95%.
Wow.
And some separate numbers in 2007, the first year that Kerr's was tested and announced we're going to bring this into the sport. The Kerr's system then, when it was still attached to the V8s, weighed 107 kilos and did about 39% efficient. In 2014, they had gotten it down to 24 kilos, right?
Holy shit.
Less than a quarter of the weight at 80%. Last year, they had knocked it down to 20 kilos, the 95% number we just talked about.
Wow.
So it's probably lighter now and probably more efficient.
Yeah.
They're not going to be sharing any of that.
Well, no.
They've also talked for the Mercedes drivers on the road that it's not going to be as long as you might think for a lot of this technology to reach road cars, which is probably good for their vehicle numbers.
Yeah, totally.
And that the total thermal efficiency, sorry for all these numbers, but it's actually ridiculous. Total thermal efficiency, basically the heat generated from burning that gas that gets turned into horsepower and reaches the road, because a lot of it turns into heat and noise. And a lot of that noise that disappeared. With the V8s, they're at 29%. So you had like 71% of every piston explosion was heat and noise wasted.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
They reached 40% last year and 47% for 2015. So they're almost half, which is crazy. Which is why the cars are a lot quieter.
Yeah.
So
because they're using up all that energy, that wasted energy.
Converting it. The MGUH and the MGUK. the heat and the kinetic energy.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there's 3 steps. The engine burns gas.
Yeah.
Creates heat. Creates spinning energy.
Yeah.
The MGUH recovers a lot of that heat from the turbine, and the MGUK recovers a bunch of the kinetic energy from the car under braking,
Right.
and from slowing the turbo,
Right.
turns it into battery power. A lot of that is wasted in heat through the electrical cables, through spinning, through friction. It has to get to the battery, and then it has to get after from the battery back out through the electric motor, which is attached to the crankshaft, out to the tire and into the road. Right? So the percentage we're talking about is from gas being burnt, turned into heat, noise, turbine spinning, that gets recovered into the battery. Some gets wasted as it charges the battery. You know, like your phone gets hot when you charge it, right? Like my phone's get kind of warm right now. It's charging. That's wasted energy. That's losing efficiency. And then when you use your phone, like, so if you start filming a video or play some crazy games on your phone, you know, it gets really hot and you're like, man, my phone's melting. That's the other side of the thermal efficiency. Okay. So Mercedes has figured out how to get rid of a lot of that.
So efficient. Germans, right?
Germans. The crazy thing is, though, like, these engines are going over 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's how much energy is coming out of the brakes, burning gas. Like, there's a lot of heat to dissipate through the intercoolers. Oh my god. That's where Mercedes is at, kicking ass. But anyways, they say they're still afraid of Ferrari.
Sure.
Ferrari's determined. They did better than they expected last year, right? Last year they said we expect to get 2 podiums. They got 3.
Now, why would they say that? Like, why would they? Did they just know they weren't in the best position possible? Like, you think
the year before they got none. Yeah, like we said earlier, that was their worst season since 1993.
Oh, that's right. Wow.
Yeah. So that's when they shuffled up their team principal.
Yeah.
They moved some engineers around. They brought some new people in. They took some old people out. They got Sebastian Vettel on board to help develop the car.
Yeah.
Which I think they've done a lot. They've changed. We won't get into it now, but they've changed the whole geometry of their front suspension.
Oh, okay.
Basically moved a lot of stuff around. Actually, if you go to the links today, can you pull up the Ferrari link? Oh, I sent you a link, Ferrari's layout. We did look at this a couple weeks ago, but it's worth looking at quickly again now.
Is it in the docs?
Yeah. It's in the links page.
Okay, I gotta find it. Hold on. Give me a second.
So last year they had their MGUK outside the engine, and they had their intercooler above the engine. This year in the V of the engine. This year they moved everything forward, split the intercooler for the MGUH, which I guess they believe is going to bring them a lot more efficiency, and moved the MGUK forward about 2 feet, which brings the center of gravity lower and towards the center. You got that?
You talking about this one?
Yeah, that's the one. So for the people watching, basically the middle and the top picture compares the two cars, and they've moved their clutch. Apparently, you can't see it in this picture, but they moved their clutch inside the transmission, which again is bringing their engine a lot more compact. Mm-hmm. Not exactly Honda's size 0, but it's a lot more compact than it was, and brings their center of gravity a lot more closer to the center than it was. So I don't know. They're pushing, but I don't know. I don't think they're super optimistic,
right?
Because they haven't made any predictions this year, not like last year. They haven't set any expectations for themselves, at least publicly.
Right.
Still pushing. Interestingly, though, teams are allowed a filming day, or maybe I think 2 filming days a year, up to 100 kilometers.
Yeah.
Which I guess they sort of get away with it as a second testing type thing.
Okay.
So Ferrari has announced that they've scheduled a filming day in Barcelona for the day before testing kicks off.
Oh, weird.
So essentially, they're going to get a day early on the track, than everyone else with about 100 kilometers of room to drive the car. Crafty indeed.
Wow.
So I'm not exactly sure what they're doing there or what they're planning to do, but obviously they plan to get some advantage out of that. One of the craftier teams.
That's pretty clever.
Critically,
Good for them.
I guess as of coming off of last year, they've got the rules to be changed to where they're allowed to provide a previously homologated engine to another team.
Okay.
Which previously the rules said every team, so say Ferrari sells an engine, it's got to be the same engine that they use themselves.
Right. Okay, I see.
But critically, the software doesn't have to be the same.
Oh, okay.
But last year, they sort of set precedent for a loophole that they don't have to do that, which is why they're giving last year's engine to Toro Rosso. And they're like, try to keep up with this.
Come on.
Yeah, we talked about a couple weeks ago, Ferrari's been involved in a little controversy with this new engine, though, because they've hired away a bunch of engineers from Mercedes, taking some of their ideas, some of their top ideas. So, I don't know. We'll see what they can do.
What is the... Because that seems shady to me. Like, it seems like a little weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, why would...
It's not in the rules, though, so it's
not in the rules. But, I mean, like... I feel like it's a little, like, underhanded. You know, like, does the FIA or any other organization within Formula One, like they look at it, they're like, oh, what are you guys doing? What's going on here? Is there anything like that?
Even outside of racing, you know, nobody's stopping you from quitting your job, switching jobs, moving to a competitor for more pay, for...
I suppose you're right.
Maybe a little more pay if you show up with a thumb drive with some CAD files and pictures on it. I don't know. But I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. They've not a lot of announcements coming from them. I don't know. So we'll see. Honda, the third most newsworthy engine, I suppose. There was some rumors floating around that they've possibly found up to 223 horsepower.
Oh, they just found a bunch of horses in the engine?
Found them, yeah. They're just laying around.
Wild horses.
I don't know. It's hard to say how founded those numbers are.
Yeah.
Partly because the number is so specific, 223 horsepower.
Yeah.
But, you know, I could pull a random number out of my ass too.
Yeah.
The big criticism of Honda last year was they were so adamant that their size 0 packaging was the thing to do. They put their turbocharger and engine compressor between the V of the V6.
Right.
To make everything compact. Whereas, like, if you look at the Ferrari, the blue and the red there is their turbocharger and compressor. They're hanging off the back of the engine. But you can imagine if you didn't have that space hanging off the back of your engine, how much smaller it would be.
Yeah, right.
But how much smaller the turbo and compressor themselves would have to be if you try to fit them between the V.
But now there's rules and dimensions of the whole car in general, though, that they have to sort of abide by.
Yeah, the height, the width, but there's no... Or not.
Like within that, you can just pretty much do whatever you want.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
If you look at the 4 engines, they're actually very different. The Mercedes, the Ferrari, the Honda, and the Renault. Probably the Honda is the most different, though, because of their size 0. But their philosophy was that they would put a smaller turbocharger between the V and spin it faster than all the other teams spun their larger turbos.
Okay.
And get the same sort of boost out of it. But it didn't work that way for them.
Didn't work out.
Right. As I said...
I have no power. I have no power.
From what I said at the start, going back to Mercedes for a second, they've enlarged their turbo every year for the past... This is their 3rd iteration of the engine. They've enlarged it every year. So what happens is with a turbo, though, you have a turbocharger, the exhaust gas spins the turbo spins the compressor, which pressurizes the pistons, pushes air into the engine, pressurizes the pistons, which makes a bigger explosion because you put more pressure in each piston. Each time the piston comes up and down, makes a bigger explosion, which pushes hotter and more exhaust out the exhaust, which turns the turbine faster, which turns the compressor faster, which puts more boost into the engine. That's how a turbo works. And when you get too much pressure, then for the engine to handle, that's what the blow off is.
Oh, okay.
And that's where a second exhaust comes from this year. That blow off is its own separate exhaust.
Oh, okay. I remember that.
So the turbo builds up as much pressure as it can handle, and the blow off sends the extra air out.
Right.
So Honda's idea, like I said, was to spin it faster than everyone else. There's actually no regulation on the speed of the turbocharger that the turbocharger can spin.
Right.
But there sort of is. I only actually learned this weekend. The ERSH, which the energy recovery system for the off the heat, which in all these engines is basically a spinning generator attached to the shaft of the turbo.
Okay.
Spins this.
All right.
The limit for that ERSH is 125,000 RPM. So unless you go crazy complicated and put like a transmission on your turbine shaft,
Yeah.
that's more or less the max your turbo can spin. But the size can be any size. This turbo boost creates, it's called a back pressure. It's like a vacuum suck
Okay.
in the exhaust of the engine coming out of the piston. The idea of the turbo, though, is that it creates more boost off the compressor
Okay.
than vacuum off the back of the turbine.
Okay.
So it's supposed to create more benefit than detriment, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Honda didn't get this right. Honda did not get this right. Mercedes got it right. And the thing is, the reason their turbo's gotten bigger is because their efficiency has gotten so much higher. When your efficiency gets better, you can pull more energy off the turbo, which means you can put more energy into the turbo system because you're getting more of it out.
Right.
It's not getting wasted, and you're not slowing down your pistons with the turbo, even though they're more powerful explosions.
Mm-hmm. It's just about efficiency, really.
It's all about efficiency.
Yeah.
Honda says this year they're still going with the size 0. Their turbine and compressor are still between the V, but they say that the turbo this year is about the same size as Mercedes was when they debuted their engine.
Oh.
So who knows? Yeah. So on the big tracks, Honda finished almost 2 laps back on Spa. I think in Singapore they did really badly because those are the tracks where you need a lot of full throttle. And these engines rely on the energy recovery, which Honda wasn't recovering enough energy to put back into their engine to keep up. According to GPS analysis, though, they're only about 40 horse down on Mercedes. Turbine aside, if you took out the turbo regulations, Honda would only be about 40 horsepower back.
Oh, that's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
But their energy system is so far behind. Nobody's sure if they can get there or not. Nobody's sure.
Well, I believe.
They believe.
Let's see.
But they refuse in Japanese style, Honda style, to hire any help. They won't take any engineers from Mercedes, try to lure them away. They won't take any from Ferrari or Renault to help them out. They refuse. So, yeah, Honda's main deal is getting the efficiency up
on their turbo compressor.
The turbo system, yeah.
Okay.
It's called, I guess, the turbo loop.
Turbo loop. Okay.
Exhaust, turbine, compression, explosion goes in a circle.
Wow. That shit is bonkers.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
So crazy.
Yeah.
And Renault, they had a lot of efficiency problems last year. A lot of Remember how many explosions they had? How many times their engine blew up? So they had the least news. There's almost nothing to even talk about with them. They had a lot of concentration on switching their team, painting all their stuff, whatever new color twice, I guess, since they pretended to be black for a week. Who knows what color they're coming back as?
Start listening to hip hop.
Yeah, who knows what they're doing?
Yeah.
But basically, all they've said about their engine is that they're working on getting the basics, which is kind of crazy. This is the 3rd year. They're working on getting their basics efficient and reliable, working on reliability.
Oh my God.
Hopefully their engine doesn't blow up.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can keep up, not become the new Honda. But it would be good for the sport if they were the new Honda for this year.
Yeah.
At least cycle that through.
Honda doesn't want to be Honda.
Hopefully Mercedes actually is scared of Ferrari and not just trying to hype the sport.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. It's a lot of questions up in the air.
Yeah.
And I guess let's keep it on the same topic. We don't have to go to a new video. Crucially, this is just announced yesterday officially.
Mm-hmm.
The token system,
It's gone.
it's being abandoned.
That's
What the hell?
Wait, is that for next year?
For next year.
For next year.
But
I'm really glad I didn't really understand it to begin with.
nobody did. Nobody understood it.
I remember we spent like an episode. You guys were telling me all about it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, tokens, cool."
Especially at the start of the season, because there was such a big debate about how many tokens is Honda going to get. They're new. They're a year behind.
Yeah.
So they ended up getting for this year the balance of the leftover tokens from the other teams.
Oh, okay.
The idea from the beginning, though, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to compress this news bit. The entire engine, the power unit, as it were, which is the engine, the turbo, the compressor, the energy systems, 66 tokens. If you want to change every part, there were 66 tokens.
Okay.
The idea from 2 years ago was to allow 32 tokens worth of change, right?
Right.
Coming into 2015, the three teams that were returning
Yeah.
outside of Honda, decided not to spend all of their tokens going into the year. And part of the regulations that were put into the book was that there was going to be no in-season development. The reason the token system was introduced in the first place was to lower the cost of development, because teams were spending in hundreds of millions, unlimited money, just developing and developing and developing engine forever.
Right.
And more or less people had thought that the V8 was reached the max of its efficiency. A lot of parts were locked down. They weren't allowed to change them.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to a new system.
Now, was this, on top of that, was the token system sort of implemented so that it was fair for smaller teams to compete?
Yeah, that as well. And for part of the token system, along with the energy efficient hybrid engine, was to attract new manufacturers. We almost had Volkswagen Audi in, but unfortunately they had that entire international scandal involving emissions and their road cars. But
that would have been cool to see that team.
It would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they can straighten that out and come back in a year or two. But the idea of all this was to lure more manufacturers back in, because they were down to 3. It worked. Honda joined. Honda came back. And last year, all the teams unanimously decided to throw out that concession. And yeah, we're just going to develop throughout the season. They all held on to tokens. And
fuck. Sorry, guys.
What happened?
Nothing.
What happened? Yeah, it's so ridiculous. So all the teams developed through the season, pushed their engines, ended the season, decided we're going to go with 32 tokens again. I believe it was supposed to be reduced this year. They all wanted 32. Sorry.
We're fine. It's fine.
They all wanted 32, came back, and last week decided, let's just scrap the token system completely. So I don't know what Honda thought about that, because probably part of them being lured back in, allowing themselves to be lured back in, making statements that they'd never leave, was because of this money saving system and energy recovery engineering that they're going to perform, that they can sell to the public in their Civics and stuff like that.
Right. Now, do you think they're going to talk to Bernie or at all, like to be like, listen, this is why we got into it? And
Maybe
like,
maybe
I'm the Dark Lord.
Yeah, maybe they want unlimited development. A couple of quotes, I guess. Like, this has been a story this week, probably the only real story. Adrian Newey, the aerodynamics dude over at Red Bull, he assumes this is going to cause a spending war. But the thing is, from during the season last year, Yasuhisa Arai, the Honda engine guy, he basically argued that the tokens don't cause the spending to go down at all. Because So think of it this way: you have an engine, and
Yeah.
you want to change your pistons are no good. You want to change your pistons.
Yeah.
Pistons cost like 5 tokens. So
Okay.
you say, okay, we have to change the pistons. We have more than 5 tokens left. Let's change them. Those tokens are only spent once you put those pistons in front of the FIA for homologation.
Right. Okay.
Once they're homologated, that means you're using that on the track. You can't use anything else. You can't go backwards. That's your engine.
Right.
Those are the parts that have to be in there when you race now.
Right.
But the thing is, you don't show anybody
The
those
other
new
pistons.
pistons
Right.
until you perfected them.
Right.
So still, you're making 10 or 15 designs. You're running your supercomputer,
Right.
testing out.
It really
new
doesn't change
shapes.
anything.
Yeah, more or less doesn't. But
Because you're still spending money on development and research on these things
Right.
until you've picked something you like.
and there's no in-season road testing, so you can't even test those parts. It's actually worse, that was his argument. It's actually worse in some ways because you test them out in your warehouse on your dyno.
Yeah.
You put that in the car, and maybe it doesn't run the way you expected it to.
Yeah.
And either way, you don't just say like, "Oh, I got the perfect piston." You make it, throw it in. You're like, maybe it didn't work. Whoops. You try all the designs,
Yeah.
as many
Now,
as
when-
you would have anyways.
When did this token system come into play?
With the new engines, 2014.
Right. What did you guys originally think about them? Like, what was your first?
I thought it was all right. There weren't with the V8s. There weren't exactly tokens, but there were. Every year they locked down areas of the engine that you weren't allowed to touch anymore. Because towards the end, they were all the different manufacturers' engines were very close in performance and
Right,
power,
okay.
in efficiency and fuel consumption.
Okay.
All that. They're all very close. So they didn't exactly have tokens, but I don't know. It was less confusing.
Right. Yeah.
So
No, it's definitely very confusing.
that's part of their argument now for getting rid of them is it's less confusing. You
Yeah.
can just focus on
Development.
all the other confusing stuff.
Like the politics.
The politics. Yeah, who knows? So, I don't know. There's going to be a spending war anyways, but I don't know. Especially if they're going to do tire testing, like major tire testing like Pirelli wants, if they want to power up these cars for 2017 or raise up the downforce or bring in tires that don't degrade like they're designed to now.
Yeah.
They have to test new tires. So maybe they'll tie tire and engine testing together on the track.
Weren't we talking about, it must have been a few podcasts ago, but we were talking about how the development of the tires has somehow, the size of the tires influenced the car in other ways they didn't expect.
Right.
I can't remember exactly what it was.
Their idea for 2017 was let's make these cars 5 seconds faster.
Right.
So their idea to do that was to boost up the downforce so they can take corners way faster. Don't have to slow down as much.
Right.
Less acceleration time. You bring the lap time down by up to 5 seconds. But what Pirelli does is they run these tires at fairly low pressures.
Yeah.
These tires couldn't
The pressures.
take the stress of cornering at those speeds. So without drastically redesigning the tires and changing compounds and the underneath construction of them, they'd have to boost the pressure higher than any team wanted, and it would negate the grip gains that the downforce would give. So at first they talked about a compromise of 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And then they kind of threw that out, and now they're looking at changing all the rules again, maybe completely new tires and less downforce overall. Anyway, the deadline for this decision is March 1st.
Oh, okay.
To lock in the 2017 rules.
Yeah.
Beyond March 1st, things can be changed, but it requires unanimous consent from every team.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
It's
That's
crazy.
insane.
It's craziness.
What a
But
crazy
needless to say,
sport.
this year should be extremely interesting. That's pretty much all the engine details we have. I want to talk about Lewis Hamilton today, though.
Okay.
I've sort of been following this story for a few months now and waiting to unveil it, but it might change how you feel about the guy.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll see.
Let's come back in a minute.
All right. We'll be right back, guys.